Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mike Kollin at MikeKollin.com. If it's meant to happen, it's gonna happen. So, I'm supposed to say that to you. So if it does happen, it's okay. So, I guess in a funny way, or maybe that's not the right word, in some kind of, I don't know, I want to say weird way, but that's not the right word either. In some way, I'm being pulled back. I had a realization years ago that there have been some paths that I've gone down that were absolutely meant for me to experience, because I wouldn't understand things that I know now. I wouldn't have grown and developed. My faith wouldn't be as strong. You know what I wish? I wish the Christian church would open up. I wish people would stop looking at everything through the either or right or wrong mentality. It's just destroying everything. See, a lot of people, I would say the majority of people on the planet, they are what we call belongers. What's the word I'm looking for? There's a psychological term, I can't forget it, but these are people that feel like you must belong to a group and you must conform. You must follow our rules, and this is what we believe, this is what we think, these are our rules, and you must abide. And if you don't, well, then you're going to hell. And here's the funny thing, all these different groups, not only of different religions, but within the same, say, Christianity. And when I say Christianity, I don't even mean Catholic. To me, that's a separate entity. And I don't mean Mormon, although I like Mormon. But everyone has all these disagreements, and they all think, well, we're going to heaven, you're going to hell. And they're talking about other Christian churches. And they do it back to and forth to each other and between each other. Look, all I'm saying there's this big fear factor created in the church where you're going to go to hell if you don't do it our way. And I am telling you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that is not what Jesus was teaching. That's not what God was teaching. You know how Jesus talks about the parable of the lost sheep and how, he asked the shepherd essentially like, well, what would you do? He's like, well, I would leave the 99 and I would go and search until I found the lost one. And then he says, and then what would you do? He's like, well, I would rejoice, and we would come home or come back to the camp or whatever, and we would celebrate for the one. See, you're the one. You know how they call you the black sheep? Well, you're not the black sheep. You are literally white as snow. But you were sent on a journey, and a lot of you went down really dark paths, okay? But it wasn't like you went down it like, oh, I'm just going to go this way. No, it's more like you got shoved down there. You got kicked out of your family. You got abused so severely that you had no other choice. And a lot of you were being led by God. In fact, I would say almost all of you on this channel. But your whole life you felt guilty about that. But I am telling you, you went down that path because you were supposed to experience something, because that's how you learn. You had to see the other side. You had to see what it was like. Those 99 that just stayed in the box, they haven't learned anything. They're just blind sheep, just doing what they're told, and they don't have faith. They're not strong in their faith. They don't have that strong connection to God. They still use the either or brain, the left brain, the tree of knowledge, the forbidden fruit, and they're stuck in there and they can't get out. They can't see, they can't hear. They have eyes yet they cannot see. They have ears yet they cannot hear. They have a brain yet they still don't know. They're the blind leading the blind because they're too afraid to take that step and to truly follow God and God only. When you learn something that is outside of their box, they will chastise you. They will yell at you. But what they should do is they should celebrate you. You understand something that they don't. That's the teaching of the parable. You went down this path and you trusted God enough to follow and do it on your own. And there are times when you're just like, why am I here? Like, how did this happen? You got shoved there, you got pushed there, you got put there. It was like, as you look, okay, here's the thing, as you look back, you can see everything that happened. Like, you know how they say you can't see the steps going forward, but as you look back, you can see how each stepping stone was perfectly in place. You learned this, which allowed you to learn this, which allowed you to understand this, which allowed you to learn more. You can see that. Like, as I look back in my journey, like, okay, I was about, I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 years out of high school, and I went down this psychology path in college, and I started studying NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and Ericksonian hypnosis, and all, linguistics and communication, and all this stuff. And I bumped into a friend of mine in an elevator at this medical facility. We were going up the elevator, and I didn't know who he was. He was in his work, you know, his belt on. He was a physical worker. And he's just staring at me, and I'm looking at this dude like, and I was looking at this dude like, really, man? You're going to stare me down? All right, bro. You're going to see what's going to happen. I mean, that was when I was at the peak of my strength, boxing, kickboxing, national champion. I mean, I was just peak everything, muscle strong. And he looks at me and goes, you don't recognize me, do you? And I'm like, should I? He goes, we went to high school together for 4 years. I'm like, really? So I'm looking at this guy for the life of me. I can't figure out who he is. And the funny thing is, we played football together all 4 of those years. Anyways, long story short, he's like, man, you haven't changed a bit. And I hadn't. I still looked like I did in high school. So we started talking. And he goes, what are you doing? And because he was an electrician. He goes, well, what are you doing? I was like, man, I'm doing this NLP stuff and psychology. And he's looking at me now. I was like one of the toughest guys in high school. I was the strongest guy of my class. And he's just looking at me like, what? I go, yeah, I'm doing this dating relationship and this love and communication stuff. And he froze. He's looking at me like, wait. And he froze for about a minute. And I'm like, what? He goes, wait. You went from this kickboxer, wrestler, football player to, teaching people about love and communication. He goes, how did that happen? And I went, huh. So he got to his floor, stepped off the elevator and hugged me and said goodbye. And I was still kind of like stunned at his question. I'm like, man, I know, man, that is kind of weird. So I was pondering that in the back of my mind, and I'm like, man, because, okay, even if you took me back to, say, my senior year or any year in high school, if someone said, oh, by the way, in about 8 or 10 years, you're going to be deeply in these studies of NLP and this and that, and you're going to become a dating and relationship coach, and you're going to specialize in communication between men and women, I would have looked at you like you were from Mars. No way, I'm going to be a world champion in boxing or kickboxing. That was my whole thing. Like, I was a fighter. That's what I did. So I remember in the waiting room just waiting. Luckily, the doctor was busy, and I was probably waiting for about 20, 30 minutes. And I was looking back on, man, like, it was such a huge gap between this guy in high school to who I am at that point. And I thought, wow, look. So I started tracing back. And one of the stepping stones was, I remember I found my dad when I was about 17 or 18 years old. That's a really intuitive journey. I literally just got in my car and I started driving. It's a long story. That is a spiritual trip. And I found him. So I kind of kept in contact for a little while, and then eventually I ended up living with him in when I was 20, from May 5th to May 5th for 1 exact year. And there was an incident that happened, and here's what it was. There was a church literally 3 doors down across the street on the corner, and I started going to that church, and I became an associate pastor eventually, blah, blah, blah. And there was this day. Now, this wasn't the only step, but it was one of the steps. And there was this day where my dad walked me down, and it was a long driveway because his house was kind of in the back of this other house. So we were walking down this kind of long driveway, not too long, I'd say about 150 feet, something like that. And we're almost at the end, and he just I go, hey Dad, do you believe in God? He goes, well, I believe in something. He goes, I know there's something, Michael, but I don't believe in the way the church people. And I was okay with that, by the way. I was like, okay, that was good enough for me. And by the way, this was the first day I was going to speak in front of church, in the church. So I wasn't an associate pastor yet. This was before that. So I was pretty young. I don't remember how old I was. And I remember out of nowhere, my dad burst out into tears. And I mean, just hysterical crying. It was about 9:45, or it was almost 10. I think the sermon started at 10, and I was the speaker. And I was like, shit, I got to go. And my dad burst out in tears. I'm like, what do I do? My dad was crying hysterically, and I'd never seen my dad cry before. And I really didn't know what to do. And I hugged him, and he just burst out loud. He goes, if God is so great, why did he make it so hard to love a woman? And I mean, he was just crying, and tears were just pouring. And he said, the harder I tried to love your mother, the madder she got at me. He still loved my mother, and this was all well over 20 years since they'd been divorced. He was still in love with her. So I didn't know it at the time, but this caused me to go into this overdrive into studying the Bible. I mean, word for word, looking up in the Hebrew Greek key lexicon dictionary. What did this word mean back then when it was in the Hebrew language? What did this word mean here? I studied like a beast. Not only that, but in college, everything I did, especially psychology, I was reading books left and right. I was studying NLP like my life depended on it. And this journey didn't even begin to slow down for 12 years. It was just nonstop. And even for the next 10 years, I would study like hours, 2, 3, 4 hours every single day. And I remember another stepping stone. I'll make it really brief because I want to kind of come back full circle here. I had a lot of anxiety, and I mean really bad. I had an extremely abusive childhood. At the time, I didn't think so. I thought it was just normal. But as I went through therapy and healing, man, I began to realize like that was abusive on a severe level. So one of my journeys, one of the stepping stones, people are like, well, what got you into psychology? What got you into NLP? It's like, well, I wanted to find out what was wrong with me. I wanted to figure out, because I'd been to the therapist. I'd tried anti-anxiety pills. I've tried a couple different things. Nothing worked. And I was on this journey. I wanted to heal. I wanted to get rid of this anxiety. So as I'm sitting in the doctor's office pondering this, all the steps were starting to reveal themselves all the way up to even to this day. And as I look back, it's like, wow, even though those things would not have been approved of, I learned not some of, but the most valuable things to help me to understand. So for those of you who got into drugs, you got into addiction. Now, I've never got into addiction. I never had a problem with that. I did dabble with drugs. I guess you could say that was one of my journeys, and I realized like, yeah, this is not a good thing here. So what I'm saying is, it's like you were that sheep that went off path, and believe it or not, but you had to experience something in order to learn what you were supposed to learn, so you could come back online, and now you can bring this to help other people. But the sad part about it is Christians, instead of rejoicing and saying, geez, man, you went down that dark path and you came back and you were 10 times better for it. And no, they're going to beat you down. They're going to say, oh, you're a sinner. It's like you're beneath me. And that's really it's that either or mentality. Well, either I'm above you or you're above me. So I'm going to pick you apart and look for everything that's wrong and all the mistakes you made. But here's the deal. That was not a mistake. God wanted you to go down that path. Okay, let's take this channel. This channel over the last 5 years has been almost solely about narcissist abuse. A lot of you went down that path of narcissists. They were abusing you and you went down this dark path. And it's like, as you look back, you're like, why didn't I leave earlier? It's because you didn't know better. because you didn't know the signs, you didn't know what to look for. Now here's the other part. You had to see absolute darkness and nothingness. For most of us who've dealt with a truly, truly demonic narcissist, you come to a point in time where you're like, there's no spirit in that body. Like there's an emptiness. There's something like something is wrong here. And you got to a point where you experienced nothing but empty darkness from this person. And it scared the living crap out of you. I know it did to me. You had to see that. You had to understand that darkness is real, that evil is real, that there are people walking around that are empty vessels, like the Bible says. It means they don't have a soul inside. They're like, in the narcissist community, they call it empty meat bags walking around. It's like, well, how are they walking around? How are they even standing? Like, what's going on? There were a lot of learnings, really, really deep, powerful learnings that the 99% of all the sheep will never even not only understand, they'll never experience. It's just like they're reading a book. Oh, okay, yeah, there's the devil. Oh, okay, yeah. Praise the Lord, praise, and they have no problems. The devil's going to go after those who are digging deep, who want to see the truth. And you were one of them. But I want you to rejoice, because I have a really, really strong feeling there is a shift that is happening for the majority of you on this channel that have gone down that path. Something is lighter, something is peaceful, and that's what I think is going to happen. I think that whole being attacked over and over again throughout your life, I think that's going to stop. I really think it's like, okay, you've got the lessons, you've got the strength, you can see what's going on, you have eyes, and now you can see. And I think from this point forward, you're just going to go forward with your journey and your lessons in different ways. Some of you will become pastors, some of you will become preachers, some of you will become therapists, some of you will become healers, energy healers. Some of you will just get a regular job, and when you bump into people, you'll share your story with them, your learnings with them. Here's what I'm trying to say. I don't care what happened. You started dealing drugs, you got into a gang, I don't know, like you got hooked up into this narcissist world and they abused you. I'm trying to think of things that you would be like, oh, well, the church wouldn't approve. Well, yeah, but you're not supposed to listen to the church anyways. You're supposed to listen to God. God's going to put you on this path regardless. If God wants to put you in a gang so you can see the other side of things and learn from it, guess what? God's going to put you in there. If God wants you to be a garbage man, somehow, some way, you're going to be a garbage man or a garbage woman. And let me tell you, the people of the church, a lot of them will rebuke you. They will tell you that you're no good, that you're bad, that you've been led astray. Well, yeah, you were led astray by God. You know, it's so funny, but even Jesus says, how did he, let me look it up, hold on. Alright, I got it. Matthew 10:22 says, you will be hated by everyone because of my name, but the one who perseveres to the end will be saved. You know, for those of you who truly follow God and believe, etc., you're the ones that get attacked. The ones who don't, they don't. Man, there was this guy who's in a bookstore, a coffee shop. He's, oh, well, you know, if you were a true believer of God, God wouldn't let that happen to you. And then I said, you've never read your Bible, have you? He goes, what? I go, that's not what God said at all. In fact, it's quite the opposite. He goes, what do you mean? I go, do you even go to church? Now, this was someone who just professed being a Christian, and he was part of this Christian group. And I read that verse off to him. He goes, oh, I didn't know that. I'm like, yeah, you're living the easy life because you're not a true follower. And that's why the devil doesn't bother with you. He knows you're not following God. He doesn't want to disturb that. He wants to make sure your life is cushy, soft, nice and plush, so you don't follow the true teachings. And this is a guy who's part of a group. He just agrees with everyone. Oh, okay, well, this is what we believe. Oh, okay, you know. And judges people harshly who don't fit in. And yet, if you read the Bible, you're like, well, wait a minute, like, you're the 99, I'm the one. I'm freaking Neo. Okay, sorry. Just goofing around. Alright, so here's my point. If you've been down a dark path, you've done bad things, or you were having this long experience that was painful and suffering and it happened again and again and again, you were supposed to learn something from that, okay? And it's like my life was not a beautiful life, let me tell you. It was this up and down, left and right, all over the place, like holy shit, it was constant. Man, I actually ended up being a garbage man, like literally in Stockton for Stockton Scavengers. And I remember just thinking, how the hell did I get here? Well, my friend's dad was the president of the company, and he called me up and said, oh, my dad needs a worker. And next thing you know, I move out to Stockton. And I'm like, what am I doing here? And it was just one thing. I was in the Army, and then I was over here. I was in Alaska. Oh, God, I did not like being in Alaska. You know what I did enjoy? I enjoyed being in Fort Benning in Georgia. I love Georgia. I thought that was awesome. The people were awesome. I love Georgia. Everything about it. Even the heat. For some reason, I don't normally like humid heat, but man, I didn't care for some reason when I was there. So I'm going to end this piece here. I'm going to add a little bit something that's probably going to shock most of you. So I want to make sure you understand something. I promise you. In fact, you probably realize it already if you've already gotten past it and you can look back at the stepping stones that this connected to that, this helped you understand that. A lot of these lessons that we had to go through, it taught us to have more and more compassion for ourselves and for other people. A lot of it has to do with understanding, to expand. See, instead of like, well, I belong in this church and we're the right church and your church is wrong, you're going to hell, we're going to heaven, like to get out of that mentality. See, the whole goal of all these lessons, these painful, suffering lessons, is to pop you out of the tree of knowledge, your left brain, which is the tree of knowledge, that either or, black or white, right or wrong, all that either or mentality. That's a filter. That's completely man-made. It's not real. Once you pop out of that, you just expand your awareness and you just see the world. You just see people for who they are without any judgment. Because when you go to judgment, you go back into that left brain. Now you're narrow and you can't see things for the way they are. You see them based on this filter, and thus you judge everything. It pops you out of judgment. And therefore, you just come from a place of awareness, a place of understanding, a place of compassion, a place of truly understanding. Like, okay, for example, how many of you, now I'm serious, I'm very serious. So in the United States of America, when we're in kindergarten, and sometimes first grade, but usually it's kindergarten, we have a day. One of them is called Show and Tell, and then we have another one where it's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And generally the homework is you got to write a paragraph or 4 paragraphs or whatever, or and you got to cut out a picture of it and talk about it. And I think you can also bring like your parents. So let's say your dad's a fireman. You say, I want to be just like my dad. I want to be a fireman. And the reason why I want to be a fireman, blah, blah, blah. And another one's a garbage man. And another one, I want to be an astronaut. Or I want to be the president of the United States, right? Or I want to be a nurse. Or I want to be a doctor. Now here's my question. I'm dead serious about this. How many of you, when you were in kindergarten, you absolutely knew that one day when you grew up, when you graduated from high school, you wanted to be a drug dealer? Or a homeless person? Probably none of you. Alright, I have a really good example to explain what I'm trying to tell you. Alright, here it is. Alright, just got it. So I had this friend in middle school and high school. Great person, great friend. In fact, I mentioned him in this video in my channel a long time ago. He helped me out. It's one of my best. It was a whole narcissist abuse video. I can't remember the name of it. But anyways, so he was, what do you call it? Straight, narrow, just hated anybody who smoked cigarettes or smoked pot, especially pot. The funny thing is, we live like Napa is really close to Fairfax, which is this is now I live like 5 minutes from Fairfax now, so I live in Hippieville, right? This is where the hippies were all about. Marin County, Fairfax. What's those two streets in San Francisco that the Beatles made this song about? I can't think of the name right now. And it's just Hippieville, man. Everyone smokes pot around here. I'm like kind of looking at like, well, you do realize you live in Northern California, right? So he just thought they were the worst people, losers, etc. Not very understanding or compassionate. All right. So here's the funny thing. Years after high school, I bumped into him, and one day he would start smoking pot. I'm like, wait, what's going on? And I remember I bumped into another friend from high school a couple weeks. Like, you're not gonna believe this. Oh, I know. Can you believe that? Him of all people smokes pot on a regular basis. So he started looking at people differently who smoked pot. He didn't judge them harshly. He wasn't this big. Man, this guy was really very adamant, like kind of mean, to be honest with you, when it came to that. But now suddenly he just had a completely flip side understanding of it. Now, I do not promote marijuana. I don't smoke it. Me personally, I can't stand it, and I don't like to be around people who do it. But at the same time, if they want to do it in their own time away from me, I'm fine with that. As long as it doesn't affect me, they don't bother me, etc., I'm cool with it. Dude, it's your life. Do your thing. We're probably not going to interact much. I'm probably not going to hang out with you. But I don't really care. I mean, I have this really big thing like, hey, this is your life. This is your journey. This is your experience. You're supposed to learn what you're supposed to learn from the things that you experience. So, when you were younger and you looked at homeless people, like, oh, what a bunch of lazy people, because that's what you think. Or let's take drug addicts. Okay, I've got a really good example. All my life, for the life of me, I couldn't understand why anyone would want to do drugs. Why, or not only that, but be hooked on drugs. Like in a million years. Like, why would you like? I couldn't even understand how you could get there. Like, everyone knows drugs are bad for you. They're addicting. Blah 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 blah. But I got ran over by a car 15 years ago, almost to this week, about 2 weeks before this. So 15 years ago in about 2 weeks or so, maybe 3 weeks. And I broke everything. And I mean, I broke dozens of bones. And they said most of your bones were broken multiple times each. So there was a lot of breaks. And I had spinal injuries, neck injuries, and I mean pain. To this day, I'm still suffering. I have pain in my neck and my back, blah, blah. But I'm a lot better. But here's the deal. They sent me home with a bottle of amazing pain pills. They're called hydrocodone. Now, I know I'm sensitive to medication and any kind of drugs at all, morphine, whatever. And I always tell the doctors, like, hey, give me about 60% because I'm really sensitive. Like, especially when you have to do surgery and they put the mask on. I said, otherwise, I may not wake up. I'll be in a coma. One guy said, I don't know about that. I'm telling you, don't do it any more than 60% or I won't wake up. And he did, and he really watched it. He goes, man, I almost went into coma. They barely got me out of it. So I come from the hospital after getting ran over by a car, and they gave me this bottle of pills, and I think it was take one every 4 hours or 3 times or 4 times a day if necessary, or maybe it was 3 times a day. But it was a lot, and so I thought, you know what? I'm just gonna take one. And life became awesome. All of a sudden, all my worries were gone. I remember even thinking of like, God, what was I worried about? Like, man, you just like your house could be burned down and you would not care. Not only that, but there was no pain at this point. I mean, I was just like, man, what was I so in pain for? Like there was like it was gone. And I remember waking up the next day, I still felt really good, right? So I just was kind of cruising along and didn't need any pills. And then the next day I needed another pill. So eventually I got to a point where I needed more. But I also realized, oh no, I did take the whole one again, and man, I was just like, man, life was just amazing. I was like, man, why don't more people do this? Now here's the deal. Before I had this experience, I used to look at people that were always trying to lie to doctors or stealing pain pills from their friends, etc. I just thought they were like the worst people on the planet. I just thought, like, why would you do that? Like why would you get addicted to pain pills? Like, for the life of me, I couldn't understand that. And so then what happened was, I realized after the third day when I took a pill, now mind you, I was supposed to take one 3 times a day, or it was 2 3 times a day, and I was taking one, and this was only my second one, and I think I took a third one, and then I remember thinking one day going, oh man, this is why people get addicted to drugs or pain pills. I was thinking, if I took 2 every 4 hours, or even 1 every 4 hours, I would have been hooked. So I got really smart, and I thought, nope, I'm not going to take any, and I don't care how much pain I'm in, for at least another 3 days. So I think I lasted 3 days, and I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take half a pill. You have to understand the amount of pain I was in was immense. Now, I played football. I've broken fingers. I've broken this. I've broken that. I've concussions, deep muscle bruise, muscles tears. I've been injured in ways you can't even imagine because all the sports I've played. And I'm telling you, the pain I was in was beyond anything that I could even imagine. So after that, I disciplined myself to take a half a pill, and only one. Now this is only one. A half a pill once every 5 days. Just a half a pill total. After, I don't know if it was 2-3 weeks or whatever, then it was half a pill once a week. And I got it down to where it was half a pill every 2 weeks. And then I just stopped taking pain pills, period. And I would only take it if I absolutely had to have it. And then I would do a half once. So maybe that was once every 3 weeks or something like that. Because I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt I would have got addicted to that stuff. And I'm so glad I did that. The amount of pain I was in was insane. But it's not that like, see, when I took a half a pill, it relieved the pain, allowed my back to kind of loosen up to where, because my joints, my muscle, my vertebrae would lock in place out of place, and it hurt like you could not believe. So when I took it, I could kind of move and pop it back into place, and so then I could survive the pain long enough, right? So I went back to my doctor. I don't remember whether it was a month later or more than that. And he goes, oh, hey, let me give you another prescription. And I was like, for what? He goes, well, for the pain pills. I'm like, oh, I still have half a bottle left. And he goes, how? He goes, where are you getting your medication? I'm like, oh, it's the one I got from the hospital. He goes, you're still on that one? I'm like, yeah. He goes, aren't you in pain? I was like, oh, yeah, I'm in pain. He goes, why aren't you taking them? I was like, because I don't want to get addicted. So my message is this. I finally understood why people were so addicted to pain pills. Like, I got it. I understood it. Like me, I was this very clean-cut person. Didn't do drugs, didn't smoke cigarettes, always went to the gym, ate very healthy, a lot of fruits and vegetables, or only organic, drink lots of water. I got so close. If I didn't have the wherewithal to go, oh shit, this is going to make me addicted. If I didn't understand that, I would have been addicted, and I would have gone down that long journey of constantly fighting this. And you know what? Everyone would have looked at me like, oh, you're a drug addict. And if I did go down that path, it's because God wanted me to learn something. Luckily, I learned it before I went down that path. But there's a lot of people that would have judged me or would judge anyone who got hooked, even though they were never, and people say, yeah, they've never done drugs before, and all of a sudden they become a drug addict. God, can you believe that? So-and-so, oh my God. Now I look at people that have gone down that path that got hooked because they were in a really bad accident, like, yeah, I get it. I understand. Because I dealt with a lot of pain in my life, I mean a lot of pain, extreme, breaking my leg, I'm not going to go through the details. It allowed me to discipline myself to deal with this extreme pain so I wouldn't get addicted. Most people don't have that discipline. Oh, by the way, this was the exact same car that I owned. Same color, same rims, same everything. This was back in the 90s. So here's another experience. I was going to clubs in San Francisco years ago, brought a friend, and then another friend. So it was me, this tall guy, and then this other shorter Hispanic guy. Really cool guy, really nice guy. And I'd never been out with him, I'd known him for years, but I really knew him. We used to live in the same building, and he used to work at this burger joint I went to all the time. So we laughed a lot and this and that. And then eventually we went, hey, let's go out. So we went out like once or twice, And he would get kind of drunk, sloppy drunk, and I really didn't like that. And it never really dawned on me that he was an alcoholic. He never told me. He never drank around me. I never saw him drunk at work. Like, it was just like, just kind of, I never thought about it. So we went out like a third or fourth time, and this was when I was with my tall friend, pretty strong dude. And we left the club because we wanted to leave, me and my buddy Luke. And then, God, I can't even remember his name, Alfonso. He was drunk, and I'm like, come on, let's go. And we're kind of pissed because he was just, dragging and falling behind. And what happened was, Luke and I got on a conversation. We're walking ahead, and we're like, dude, where's Alfonso? So we're about a block ahead of this guy, and we turn around. He's with these homeless people and hugging him. Oh, you're my friends. And then they were reaching his pocket, and I go, what the fuck? And by the time I got there, they put a crack pipe to his mouth, and he took a hit. Now, he was drunk out of his mind. So how people say that like these things are gateway drugs, and other people's like, oh no, they're not, like marijuana or whatever. Well, even alcohol can be. So I remember the next day I went to his work, and it was like, we were because we ended up physically carrying him back, and we had to yank them away from those people. They were trying to steal his wallet. It was a kind of a messed up deal. And we had to physically carry him back because he didn't want to. No. In fact, we almost left him there. And I said, look, if we leave him here, he's going to get hooked on crack cocaine. So the next day I went into his work. I was pissed. And I'm like, hey, man, so how long you been smoking crack? And he goes, what are you talking about? I don't smoke crack. Now, here's the thing. He didn't smoke pot, didn't smoke cigarettes. He had a drinking problem, which I found out that night. But he didn't do drugs. And he goes, dude, I don't smoke. I'm like, dude, that's my point. You were smoking crack last night. He goes, no, I wasn't. I'm like, yes, you were. I said, you were so drunk you wouldn't come home with us. You wouldn't let us give you a ride home, and you end up hanging out with these homeless people, and we walked ahead not realizing this, and you were smoking crack by the time we got back to you. It shocked the hell out of him. It wasn't like he hung out with some friends like, hey man, try a hit. He's totally clean and sober or whatever. It was just like he didn't know what he was doing. And then I'm like, man, I bet that's how a lot of people get hooked on drugs. Now, please understand, this doesn't mean, okay, number one, do not do drugs. I'm telling you right now, because that is a doorway for an evil entity to get into you. I'm telling you right now, there's one thing I will not touch, it's drugs. I have learned my lesson mostly from watching other people go through it. And I will tell you, it was because that narcissist abuse and all that demonic shit that went on 5+ years ago. And I realized sex, drugs, getting drunk out of your mind. If you want to drink like a glass of wine or something like that, that's fine. But I am telling you, I will have nothing to do with drugs. I won't even hang out with people that do drugs. And here's why. Now listen closely. That is not part of my journey. There was a little angel young lady that I took care of, very much cared about her with all my heart, with all my soul, and I found out years later she was going down this. I had no idea. I was so, I guess, naive to it. And when I started seeing the signs, like, whoa, and I started asking, what's going on here? And she just blurted it all out. Meow, do this, do that. And I was like, whoa. And it was a really sad journey. And it got to the point where I was like, hey, this is your journey. This isn't my journey. And that's something you have to respect for yourself. Some person's journey doesn't mean that, I'm this compassionate person, so I have to go down this journey with him. No, That does not mean that. So I had to let her go, hope, and I even told her, hey, if you get your act cleaned up, you can go to clean and sober, go through so many years of therapy, etc. I go, you can call me in 5 years, after you've been clean for 5 years, you can call me back. Like literally, it had to be like that, and we've never reconnected again. That doesn't mean I look down on her or judge her or anything. I'm hoping that she can get herself out of that and she can learn what she has to learn. One thing that I think a lot of people don't understand, I think one thing where I'm blessed, and it could be, if you believe in past lives, maybe it's because I've lived so many times, I've learned to learn just by watching, by paying attention, by paying to other people's mistakes. Even when I was a little kid, I would just, my crazy brothers would get it, because we lived on kind of this hill, and they would make a ramp, and they're going to jump this thing, and I'm like, man, I don't know if you crash, that's going to hurt, because you're going to be sliding on the cement. And I would just sit back and watch this stuff for a while. And sure enough, somebody would be crying and screaming like, yep, I'm not going to do that. So what I'm trying to say, and that was a big thing for me, like I learned by watching people make mistakes. Okay, I would say, yeah, I'm going to watch people do drugs. I'm not going to do it myself. I'm going to kind of kick back and watch for a couple of years and see what happens. Like, where does this go? And that was a blessing that I had. I see, you don't necessarily have to learn by going through this big, dark, negative experience. Like, you can learn by paying attention. Like, okay, for example, I talk to people at narcissist abuse all the time because you can see like, oh, this is an empath. Oh, they're going through, but they don't know. And I say, hey, you really need to Google this. You need to go on YouTube and watch these videos. Nah, that's okay. I'm cool. And I'm like, no, you're not listening to me. But some people, they have to learn the hard way. In fact, I was one of them when it came to like narcissist and walking away from people that did the feel sorry for me thing. Because being an empath, all you want to do is love people. You just want to help people. And man, did I go down so many other people's paths that I was not meant to go down. And I got hurt really bad. And that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned in life is... A neighbor said it really good to me about a month ago. He said, I don't help people unless they ask me. He goes, I don't get involved. And I got to tell you, like, that's something that I've really had to learn. Like, even though I've backed off, I'm finally at a point where it's like, no, if you don't ask me for help, I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to volunteer. Because a lot of times they'll get pissed. But more importantly, it's like my pastor said. Pastor Rex said this years ago. He said, one thing I learned, Michael, don't get in between God and people and people's lessons. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, Michael, I've learned to stay out of the way in between people and God. Do not get in between people and God. He didn't really break it down enough to where I'm just like, what are you talking about? What does that even mean? And I learned the hard way. And I wish if he would have explained it and gave me some example, I'd be like, oh, okay. And I've had to learn the hard way. Like, some people have to learn their lesson, and they have to learn it the hard way because otherwise they won't get it. They won't. I mean, you could explain it to him, and he might have probably explained it to me in depth. I believe I at least would have learned it faster. But it may have just been my journey. Like, no, you're gonna have to learn the hard way. It's kind of like someone could tell you don't touch the stove when it's hot, and you're like, why? Because it's going to hurt. It's going to burn you. Remember when you burn your finger with a match? It's like that. But you're still curious. So instead of just learning, you put your hand on the stove. You're like, ah! And so, believe it or not, but a lot of people, they learn that way. Okay, so here's what I'm trying to say. I'm going to give you, let's go back to Jesus and the parable of the sheep. It's funny because it's really clear when Jesus says, so he says to the shepherds, so like, what do? He goes, well, I leave the 99 sheep to go find the one. And Jesus says, well, what happens when you find it? He goes, essentially, he goes, I rejoice, I celebrate, I bring it back, and I'm happy, and we all get together and we have a party, and it's like, it's a rejoicing. It's not a punishment. And a lot of Christians don't get that. Here's what I'm trying to say. A lot of you did stuff, sold drugs, did whatever. You went down a path that you were just like, Like, what the hell? Like, what? Why did I do that? Like, what happened? Okay? I'm telling you, you were meant to go down that dark path. You were supposed to do it. It was God's destiny for you. You were meant to go down that path. It's like those other people aren't learning. They're just these blind sheep, completely asleep, completely disconnected from spirit. They don't know left from right, up from down. Those are the ones that Jesus said, you have eyes yet you cannot see, you have ears yet you cannot hear, and I like to throw in, you have a brain yet you do not know, because you can't have knowing without experiencing. So God goes out and finds you and brings you back, and is holding you in his arms and rejoicing. So, I wrote this down. You went down that path like the curious little sheep that you are, not paying attention, and then all of a sudden you got lost, but then God finds you. He brings you back, rejoicing, holding you in his arms. And all these people are judging you harshly, condemning you, saying you're going to hell, you're a sinner, you're beneath me now. All the while, literally, while God is holding you in his arms, they're condemning you. They're saying these horrible things to you. And God's holding you in his arms, hugging you, cherishing you, carrying you home. And he is happier than you could imagine to have you in his arms. And he's the one who's not condemning you. In that parable, where does Jesus say, and then God punishes you? He doesn't. He literally says the shepherd rejoices just as much as God will rejoice, etc., etc. You were supposed to learn those lessons. You were meant to do that. Now here's another one, and this is really what stimulated this video. It's completely opposite, but someone had said, like, well, I don't worship Jesus. And I'm like, that's okay. See, a lot of people think it's like right or wrong. Well, if you don't worship Jesus, then you're going to hell. It's like, that is such... Here's the deal. You don't need to worship Jesus. Jesus will still love you. God will still love you. God will still go out and find you and bring you back and hold you in his arms. There's a lot of people who still think it's about following the rules and doing certain things. Well, if I do this, then God's going to love you. I am telling you, God already loves you. I mean, imagine a parent literally going, okay, well, when this kid wins the decathlon, wins 2 gold medals, and then makes $5 million a year for 10 years consistently, then I'll love them. But until then, they're going to hell. You can't buy God's love. That's what I'm saying. You can't buy God off. You can't pay God. You can't give him enough gold and jewels. The only thing you can do is accept it. Open up and receive God's love. But Mike, if I bow enough and pray enough and worship enough, then God will love it. Like this whole if, then, either, or, no. Just accept, just receive. God bless you guys. If you like this video, please click subscribe, click the like button. Go ahead and make a comment. And if you want, you can go ahead and make a donation. There's a PayPal link right there in the description box. God bless you guys. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.